Welcome to the Crystal Self-Healer Podcast. I'm Carissa Weaver. On this podcast, we blend the magic of crystals with the science of psychology to help you break free from chaos, ditch the overwhelm, and master your emotions so you can have more energy, get more done, and feel better every day. Get ready to unlock your intuition and restore your true power as we cover how you can transform your life using crystals and self-awareness. Are you ready to get started? All right, let's go. So many of us are poorly equipped to manage our minds. Many of us weren't exposed to some of the newer or healthier approaches to parenting or therapy that are more focused on emotional awareness and resilience. If your experience as a child was the black and white, I'm right, you're wrong style, with little to no opportunity for dialogue or learning, it's no wonder we have compromised abilities to work through places in our lives where we don't feel like we are in control. When you learn the ways to capture and isolate the thoughts that are causing mayhem in your mind, you'll have the key to opening up so much space in your mental and emotional world, reducing your feelings of anxiety, stress, and overwhelm. It is a beautiful thing. We don't need to continue thinking the thoughts that are rooted in fear, shame, guilt, worry, or any of the other negative feelings. In the last episode, we covered how to create an energy shield with crystals, and that is a wonderful defense you can employ when negativity is being directed at you from an external source. But when the call is coming from inside the house, this type of protection won't significantly address your concerns. And no one needs to stay in a repeated experience where they are under a constant barrage of negative thoughts. Picture this scenario with me. You've been going about life doing your best to manage the constant cacophony of emotions, sensations, and the associated thoughts that come with them. Over time, this experience has you holding on to stress and tension. You're having difficulty sleeping at night, and a relentless loop of negative thoughts are taking center stage in your mind. The longer this situation persists, the more likely you experience intense fatigue, persistent headaches, and you might see dark circles under your eyes when you look at yourself in the mirror. You're filled with self-doubt and anxiety, and you start to pull away from the people in your life, constantly at the mercy of the negative thoughts in your mind. This was the scenario one of my clients was experiencing when she came to work with me. She was so overwhelmed, she was reaching her breaking point, and she had fallen into a really dark space that was taking a toll on her emotionally and physically. She was feeling responsible for the safety and security of everyone around her, and the constant pressure and guilt that she was inflicting on herself was contributing to her constant headaches and stomach pains. Her negative thought loops were always showing her how she was disappointing the people around her, a perception that wasn't true. She would try harder to tend to their needs. And when she didn't see the appreciation she desired from the people around her, she would then shift into a negative focus on how all her efforts were overlooked, unappreciated, unvalued, and taken advantage of. She was experiencing all these negative thoughts that were ping-ponging between how she wasn't good enough to they don't care, and she didn't know how to make them stop or how to get control over them. If you relate to this, you're in the right place, because today we're going to dive into how you can manage your mind with crystals. But before we get into the crystals and how to use them, let's evaluate this scenario a little bit more. When you feel yourself being swept up in a constant swirl of negative thoughts, with more negative thoughts being served up at every turn, you may be experiencing the negative effects of the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. This is an observational frequency bias that will keep you noticing more of the same things once you have seen it for the first time. When your mind is doing what your mind does best, it's conserving energy by looking for and serving up what it already knows, what it is already familiar with. And the more you think or respond to those things, the more you secure the neural pathways in your brain to do more of that thing. This can leave you experiencing an increased frequency and amplification of the negative thoughts you were having in the first place, creating a cycle of more of the same. The good news here, the same effect at work can be used to break the cycle. You see, this theory demonstrates that the more you focus on something, the more you will see of it. So if you're focusing on all the negative thoughts you're having, your mind will just serve up more of them, along with all the evidence it can find to support those thoughts. So when you manage your mind, you're really finding a way to flip the switch to focus mainly on the positive thoughts. We'll get more into that a little later. In the case of my client, her thoughts and patterns were monopolizing her mind and her day, creating feelings of resentment and disconnection from the very people she wanted to feel connected to. It is so easy to stay stuck in our unhelpful or unserving thoughts, especially when our negative thoughts become our identity. When our brains do what they do best, and repeatedly show us confirming evidence of our negative thoughts, we then believe them to be an indicator of who we are, and we start to incorporate these details as a truth about who we are and what we do. These negative thoughts and beliefs about ourselves combine with our ingrained neural pathways, and it's almost like we've become addicted to the thoughts and the feelings they create. Much like alcoholics or smokers who see these behaviors as part of who they intrinsically are. And while recreating who you see yourself as is possible, it may take a little while for you to reprogram the neural pathways in your brain. And anyone who has tried to change something that they believe to be innately them will understand just how difficult it can be to make these changes. The trick becomes, how do we interrupt this patterned behavior so that we can start to think and believe something different? I am sure you have noticed that all over the internet you'll find affirmations and gratitude being offered up as primary solutions for negative thoughts. And while they're great, sometimes they are a bridge too far for what you can do when you're starting to break these bad habits and negative patterns that have become your identity. The prospect of needing to shift your thinking from "I'm no good" to "I'm awesome" can be overwhelming for an empath and HSP woman, especially when they don't have the best support systems available to them. When we aren't fully in belief of the affirmation, we can become tight and graspy, almost forcing the new thought into existence. I don't know about you, but I've never experienced stunning outcomes when I was trying to force a square peg into a round hole. What helps us really make progress is to have an openness and curiosity around what we're experiencing and doing. And that just doesn't happen when you're actively resisting the thing you're doing. When you're in this stage of beginning to consciously choose a better feeling thought, I love to use a crystal healing tray as a way to reinforce and remind me of what it is that I'm working towards. This process complements the 3-step foundation I teach all my clients for navigating the circumstances, triggers, and reactions that are generating their negative thinking. First, we ask, how do I want to feel? And then we follow that with, what will help me feel that way? With those 2 nuggets, you then pick the crystal from the healing tray that best represents the way you want to feel, and use that as the physical reminder of the intention you've just established. If you don't yet have an assortment of crystals to use in a healing tray, you can try working with amethyst here. It's a great protective crystal that is wonderful for kicking addictive behaviors. Here, it would be the addiction to your negative thoughts, yet it's also gentle and supports divine connection. An all-around beautiful crystal. The beautiful thing here is that by choosing and working with the chosen crystal, you're creating opportunities for you to reflect on how you want to feel, keeping that intention front of mind. This will then trigger your brain to start looking for the things that support this intention, making it a whole lot easier for you to then start doing the affirmations or gratitude work. It's almost as if you've tricked the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon to work for you instead of against you. Now, back to my client. In our sessions together, we used a variety of tools that helped her notice when she was reverting to the thoughts that kept her in the unserving thought loops. This then gave her the opportunity to choose thoughts that felt better and more in line with what she wanted out of life. A lot of managing your mind has to do with learning to not use your negative thoughts against you by using them as reasons to mentally and emotionally beat yourself up. In the case of my client, she held herself to such high standards that when other people weren't doing the things she would do or weren't interested in upholding the standards she held for herself, she would weaponize these moments as failures on her part. She had loving and supportive people in her life, yet it was her negative thought loops along with the associated expectations she held for herself that didn't allow for her to receive the support those around her were willing and able to contribute. By choosing the way you want to feel along with how you will start to generate that feeling for yourself, you prime your brain to seek out more of those moments in life that support the intention you hold and create the evidence that you are. You can then start building belief in yourself as this different version of you by being reminded of all the reasons that support your new identity. When you manage your mind, you allow new neural pathways to be created, making it much easier for the more positive thoughts to become your more prevalent thoughts. Doing this work doesn't mean you'll never experience another negative thought in your life. What it does for you is set you up to see when you're slipping back into a negative pattern and equips you with the tools that will help you get back on track faster and easier the next time it happens. Bad and ugly stuff happens in the world, and we will always have thoughts that arise from these circumstances. It's whether you want to manage your mind so that you have better resilience, create more confidence and belief in yourself, experience more connection with the people in your lives. That's the upside you get when you manage your mind with crystals. If you're ready to start managing your mind, use the link in the show notes and book a complimentary call with me. I would love to talk to you about not only how this work is going to benefit you, but also how I can be helpful. This episode is brought to you by Amethyst and the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. May we all experience the loving embrace of divine connection as we manage our minds to seek out and reinforce the highest versions of ourselves. Blessed be, my friends. All right, my friends, that wraps up this week's episode. Thank you for joining me here today on the Crystal Self-Healer podcast. If you haven't already, hit subscribe, leave a review, and take the What Crystal is Best for You quiz linked in the show notes. Join me again next week as we continue to demystify crystals, how your brain works, and how you can use them so you can have more energy, get more done, and feel better every day.